This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, July 21st, 2021, and our topic today is how to prevent financial exploitation and what to do if someone you know or love is a victim. I'm Stephanie Schneider, your host, board-certified elder law attorney, and I'm glad that you're joining me today for such an important topic. So you may not know that our current president declared June 14th, 2021 to be National Exploitation Day. And the whole purpose behind this is to raise awareness so that more people are spotting the things that signify exploitation or neglect or abuse is actually taking place so that it can be stopped much quicker than it currently is. So as part of the president's plan for 2021, more funding is being put to promote community living. What that means is we want to encourage people to age in place, either in their home or the home of a family member, as opposed to people having to go live in a residential facility. There's also more funding being put into the Elder Justice Act to handle these exploitation cases, and more funding being sent down to the individual states to help their adult protective service departments. And in order to understand what a significant issue this is in our country, we have to first appreciate the number of people that are over age 65 and what is projected to be the fastest growing age population by the year 2040. And that is age 65. It is projected that we will have over 80 million citizens in our country over age 65 by the year 2040. That's just mind-blowing. The second fastest growing age category is going to be age 85. And it is estimated through the Census Bureau that we will have over 14 million citizens age 85 and older in the year 2040. So this, unfortunately, is going to put a lot of people in a position where they may be infirm, they may be physically frail, and that leads to an increase in the prevalence of abuse and financial exploitation. And what I have seen in the last 15 months since COVID came to our country is that there is abuse and exploitation that's been going on for a long time, but unfortunately, a lot of cases do not get reported. They don't get reported to the police or to the state attorney's office. So my goal today is to share some real life situations with you, share with you legal options that are available to handle the situation if you do suspect abuse, neglect, or exploitation, as well as tips on how to avoid becoming a victim. So we're going to start with a real life story. The woman that you see in the presentation is Catherine Havens. Now, Catherine moved into her mother's home. Her mother was a widow, and she brought with her her adult daughter, the granddaughter of her mother. Now, the senior Mrs. Havens started to have some physical aging issues. And rather than her daughter hiring a home health agency to come in and provide services, or calling her mother's doctor to see if the doctor would write a referral for Medicare services, perhaps for a home health aide, perhaps some physical therapy, she panicked. And in panicking, she relied on misinformation she had either heard or seen on the internet. And that created a fear that if her mother moved out of the home, let's say she moved into assisted living or skilled nursing, that Medicaid was going to take control of the home, and then Catherine and her daughter would have no place to live. So unfortunately, due to her fear and this misconception about the law, she was limited in her ability to truly care properly for her mother. And as a result of her not seeking the proper medical services for her mother died at home of wounds that never should have happened. And it was probably a very painful death for her. The authorities found out about this, and Catherine, as well as her daughter, were charged with the second-degree murder of Dorothy Havens in 2015. The daughter was convicted, and she is currently serving time in prison. Now, this is truly an egregious situation. You might say, Stephanie, I'm sure this doesn't happen a lot, but I will tell you she's not the only one that believes Medicaid is going to take the home. And that is just a rumor. It's not true. Here in Florida, we protect the home when the owner needs Medicaid assistance, whether they're going to get that assistance while they live in their home or if they were to move into assisted living or skilled nursing. We still protect the home. So what this teaches us is we need to find a way to connect people with resources that will help them so they can rely on accurate information when making decisions. And as a result, we don't want the homeowner or the elder being the victim. So let's start by understanding how Florida defines abuse, neglect, and exploitation, because this is going to help us understand who are the people that the law protects. So in Florida, we define an elderly person as somebody over 60 years of age who is experiencing physical aging changes, or maybe they are impaired in some way. It could be cognitively, could be physically, maybe mental health is impaired. And so they're really not able to provide for their own care or even to protect themselves from other people with unscrupulous motives. Now, they're not the only demographic that we protect. We also protect disabled adults. So those are people who are over the age of 18, who either were born with a developmental disability, such as autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, intellectual disability, and a host of other developmental disabilities. We also protect adults who have organic brain damage, mental illness, or they have physical or mental limitations that restrict their ability to carry out activities of daily living. Activities of daily living are our ability to get dressed, to feed ourselves, to go to the bathroom, to groom ourselves, to be able to transfer from a bed to a chair or to a wheelchair. So we also protect this demographic as well. Now, if somebody does not fall in either of these categories, they're not an elderly person, they're not a disabled adult, there is another category that Florida refers to as a vulnerable adult. And this is somebody over age 60 who either has the functional, mental, or physical inability to care for themselves. So functional might mean that I have a disease process and I can't use a phone, so I couldn't call somebody if I fell. Or a mental health problem that could be depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or It could mean a physical inability. Let's say I'm in a wheelchair. I lost the ability to walk. So these are the three categories of people that under our law here in Florida are protected, and there are criminal ramifications if they are a victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. So it's important for us to truly have clear vision when we look at somebody and understand what makes somebody more at risk than someone else to becoming a victim. Now, you may or may not be surprised at what some of these factors are, but let's walk through them. So we have seen since COVID began 15 months ago that when everybody was forced to stay in their homes and be safe, that there was lack of contact, lack of physical contact, lack of communication even. And so people who don't have a social network, perhaps they are a widow or a widower, they're unmarried, they've always been single, they don't have children, maybe they don't socialize, they don't have that social network, they are more at risk for becoming a victim because there are people not around them watching. So it's easier for somebody to take advantage of them. Another major factor is cognitive impairment. If somebody is experiencing changes in the brain that affect their perception of reality, that affect their memory, perhaps, and somebody else observes this, it is easier for that perpetrator to convince that person that they are somebody the victim can trust. So cognitive impairment is a very high risk factor. The studies show that the third highest risk factor is people who are in poor health or are functionally impaired. They have a greater need, a greater dependence to rely on other people. And they may not always make the best or the wisest decision on who should be trusted. I found it interesting that the studies said that women are more likely than men to be victims of abuse, and that people with disabilities are also more likely to become a victim. I'm going to share with you a story about one of my clients. So this will demonstrate the next factor, which is placing somebody at risk to becoming a victim, and that is the desire to win a prize. I have a client whose husband is in his 80s, who is undergoing cognitive impairment, and as a result has been targeted by scammers on his cell phone. And these scammers repeatedly call him and tell him that he has won an $18 million prize. Now, as a side note, I will tell you that my client's husband never bought a lottery ticket and never entered a contest. Yet, his perception of reality doesn't allow him to make the connection that there's no way he could have won a prize when he didn't take any action. As a result of these people convincing him that he won an $18 million prize, which is being protected by Department of Homeland Security, they have managed to convince him that he needs to send them money to cover the taxes for the prize. Now, this has not happened just one time to my client's spouse, but it has happened multiple times where he has sent money, he has sent cash, he has sent gift cards, tens of thousands of dollars. And they have picked up on the fact that he is cognitively impaired and is so caught up in the thrill of thinking and believing that he has won this prize, that he has become a victim. This also happens on the internet with emails or going to an unsecure website. So we have to watch. When we see these risk factors, we have to be mindful, we have to be aware, and whether we are a relative, a neighbor, or a friend, really need to be checking in on this person to see, do they need our help or the help of the authorities to be safe? And as I said a few minutes ago, COVID-19 has created the perfect environment for perpetrators. People are alienated. Their family members who live out of state are not traveling to physically check in on them. And it's a very, very sad situation, but one that we have to be aware of, and we have to do something about this so we can put an end to the abuse and the exploitation. So what do you think a perpetrator looks like? And this question is very much like the one I used to ask my daughter when she was 5 years old, and I would ask her, what do you think a stranger looks like? And we probably would tend to have an unrealistic view based upon, let's say, movies that we watch. But perpetrators have become very sly, and they come up with all types of names and disguises that you and I might not even think was possible. And believe it or not, a lot of the exploitation is committed within the family unit. It could be a grandchild that moves in to supposedly take care of a grandparent, or somebody else in the family who decides that they're going to start to help themselves to that older adult's credit card or debit card, or have that older adult write checks to them, paying them for their services, but it's an unreasonable amount, one that is not justified by the services. Perpetrators can also be friends and neighbors. Again, if we think about it, if somebody is alienated, they're probably going to rely more on the people that are physically closer to them, such as a neighbor. Maybe it's a neighbor they knew for many years since they bought their home. So there is this assumption that that person is okay. They're trustworthy. I can rely on them. But this is where we have to proceed with caution, because those neighbors and friends may have their own hidden agenda. And when realizing that family is not nearby, there's nobody else checking in on this person, those are the people that become the perfect victims. Perpetrators can also look like a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend who manages to weave their way into another person's personal life, creating what we call a confidential relationship, one where there is reliance, one where there is the trust that this person is okay. I can trust them with my wallet. I can give them the keys to my house. So perpetrators come in all shapes and sizes, including paid caregivers, caregivers that you might have coming into the house through a registry or a home health agency. So we still have to be mindful and careful, even if they are coming through an agency that would have first performed a background check, checked the Department of Children and Families website to make sure there was no abuse report. It can still happen. The studies do show that perpetrators tend more often to be male rather than female, but abuse and exploitation is an equal opportunity type of thing. People who commit abuse and exploitation are not likely doing it for the first time. They probably have a past criminal history, And sometimes what leads to the exploitation is that the perpetrator has a substance abuse problem, financial problems, or is unemployed. So they are committing the exploitation out of desperation. So what does abuse look like? And you do not have to be a nurse working in a doctor's office or a hospital to look for these signs. These are signs that everybody needs to watch out for. If you happen to be in, a neighbor's home and you see that they have bruises on their arms, perhaps they say that they recently tripped and now they have a broken bone, you need to be a little suspicious. That could be a sign that they were physically hit, physically abused. But abuse also takes other forms. There's mental and emotional abuse. It could be where a caregiver or a neighbor says, if you don't give me, and fill in the blank, money, cash, your jewelry, I'm just going to leave. Then you'll have nobody to take care of you. See what happens then. So that's an example of where the perpetrator is creating a codependency on the victim. So they're mentally and emotionally abusing them, which is actionable under Florida law. It doesn't have to be physical. But the key here is that the abuse is done with intention. This is not done accidentally, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. It is an intentional act with a specific motive. Now, I just want to touch quickly on neglect, because neglect is something that happens. We don't necessarily have a perpetrator, but sometimes it's self-neglect. That somebody is, because they might be physically disabled, they're not getting to the store. So perhaps there's no food in the refrigerator, or the food that's there is now rotten. So they're not receiving adequate nutrition. Maybe they're not following up with their doctor. They're not going for the checkup. They're not going for the blood work. And so because they're not seeking medical services, maybe their medical condition, whatever that is declining. We also see situations of neglect where a prescription has expired, it hasn't been refilled, or perhaps the pills are still in the bottle and the person is not taking them as instructed. This might signify that there is a disconnect. There is something cognitively going on that we need to be mindful of. It can also be that neglect occurs as a result of inadequate shelter. Maybe somebody stopped paying their electric bill, so the electricity was turned off. That's another warning sign of neglect. Now, if somebody is aware that an elder or a person with a disability is being harmed, and that person fails to report it, that is also considered neglect under the statute. So how apparent do you think exploitation is? And I will tell you that since COVID began, I get at least one, if not more, calls a week at my office from different people with allegations of financial exploitation. And I will tell you that while I think I'm a very creative person, I could never, in my wildest dreams, come up with some of the scams that I have heard of. So these scams are always going to employ either deception, making somebody think something that's not true, such as my client's husband who believes he won $18 million without ever entering a contest, or the other mode is through intimidation. And that's where, we sometimes see the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse. One example is where the perpetrator is able to befriend the victim to the point where they convince them, let me take you to a lawyer that I know, and you can name me as the person to make your financial decisions. Oh, and by the way, since I'm taking care of you, I think that you should leave everything in your will to me. So we see where powers of attorney have been altered, wills have been completely changed, where family members have been left out, all because of exploitation. You might see that the perpetrator has even convinced the victim to sign a new deed that gives ownership of the victim's home to the perpetrator without receiving any compensation in return. We also see where perpetrators will actually go with the victim that they've befriended to the financial institution and have the perpetrator's name added to a bank account. So now they are a joint owner with the victim, which gives them complete ability and legal rights to take all the money out of that joint account. Under Florida law, the bank does not need the consent of the other joint owner. And last but not least, we have seen during COVID a lot of telephone scams as well as computer scams, sending money away to sweepstakes that truly don't exist, sending money or gift cards for prizes that you haven't received. I have seen imposter emails about stimulus checks that were never from the government, or imposter emails saying you owe the IRS taxes, and if you don't pay, we're going to seize your home. These are all scams. You need to think before you act. And please don't click on and open an attachment to an email from somebody that you don't recognize. So what can we do if we start to recognize what we believe are red flags that somebody is a victim of either abuse or of exploitation? Well, if these scams are coming through the internet, through email, through telephone, one of the first things you do is you cut off the lines of communication. Okay? Through your internet, you can work with your IT specialist. You can direct any unknown, unrecognized emails into your spam folder, for example. You can get an unpublished number. You can look at the caller ID before you choose to answer the phone. These are all ways that we can exercise the control. The second thing you want to do is to freeze your credit. That way, if they get hold of a credit card, they get hold of your Social Security number, the major credit reporting agencies, and there are 3 of them, are going to be quickly put on notice. And if a credit card has been compromised, you want to contact that credit card company immediately, make a fraud report, and cancel the card. And certainly pull a credit report, and everybody's entitled to one at no charge per year. Pull your credit report and look, see what is on it. If anything looks suspicious, you need to call that credit reporting agency, but you don't want to delay doing this. If you have a loved one who's impaired, it might be time for you to apply to Social Security and become their representative payee so that the payment that they're getting from Social Security will go electronically into an account that you will monitor. Now, in order to be appointed representative payee, you're first going to need to obtain a letter from your loved one's physician that says that person is not able to properly handle their financial affairs, either due to a physical disability, a cognitive disability, whatever the diagnosis is. Now, one of the ways scams and exploitation occur by people that are known to the victim, such as family members, is through the improper use of a durable power of attorney. So if the elder is still sufficiently mentally aware, one of the things to consider is bringing that victim to an elder law attorney so that they can cancel the durable power of attorney and present the document which revokes the power of attorney to all of the victim's financial institutions. That way, if the perpetrator goes into the bank or the brokerage company trying to present the power of attorney, they will already know that they are not to honor it because it's been canceled. Now, earlier you heard me say that there are certain protections and benefits of hiring a caregiver or a home health aide through a licensed agency. And that is because the agency is going to do a background investigation. They're going to have workers' compensation insurance in case that person gets injured on the job. It does not necessarily mean that it's 100% guarantee, but it is better than if you were to hire somebody that you heard from a neighbor or somebody at church had worked for them under the table. Don't get caught up in thinking, oh, I'll save some money, because it might actually be costing you more in the long run if you become a victim of their financial exploitation. So the next step to take is going to be have the victim evaluated by a physician or a neurologist. This is important to document because if the police are going to refer this to the state attorney's office for prosecution, it is important to have that medical evidence that the person's physical or cognitive abilities were compromised. You might also need to ask their doctor to complete the state form to revoke their driver's license. If they have a cognitive impairment and they just don't perceive the danger of them driving, you might have to ask the doctor to help remove their driver's license. You want to stay in close communication and you want to help build a support network for people that are by themselves, whether that's because they have a spouse who died or whether they've just chosen to live alone. You might find that if you're living out of state and you have a loved one here in Florida, that it's beneficial to hire a life care manager, somebody with a social work background or a nursing background who's going to be checking in on your loved one, who's going to make sure that they get to the doctor's appointments, that prescriptive medications are timely refilled and timely taken. So when you see something that doesn't pass the smell test, the key is to say something, do something about it before it becomes a bigger problem. Now, here are some local resources that I'm giving to our attendees today and everybody who's going to be watching the recorded webinar. Florida has an abuse hotline. Their number is 800-962-2873. You can also go to the myfloridafamilies.com website and you can file a report online. Making a report is confidential. The report will be filtered down onto the county level to Adult Protective Services for investigation. There is also a National Fraud Information Center. Their phone number is 800-876-7060. You can also go to their website, fraud.org. There's a lot of great helpful information on that website. That's how I learned that the scammers who were taking advantage of my client's husband realized that they no longer needed him to mail them the gift cards he was purchasing. All they needed him to do was to give them the number of the gift card over the telephone, and then they were able to spend the money on that gift card. So there's a lot of good educational information on the National Fraud website. As I mentioned, every county has an Adult Protective Services division, and we're going to talk in just a minute about what their scope of authority is and what they can do. We have here in Broward Jewish Family Services, so you may want to call them, especially if you are out of state and you need assistance with a loved one that is here in Florida. In Wilton Manors, we have the agency SunServe, which is a social service agency that serves the LGBTQ population, another great resource in Broward County. There's also the National Center on Elder Abuse. They also, like the National Fraud Center, have great information. They have webinars that you can attend for free. And there's also the National Center on Law and Elder Rights. Now, if you've called the Adult Protective Services hotline in Florida and it gets sent down to the local level, the investigator has to first determine whether the victim has the ability to give consent to receive protective services. Protective services might mean that that person needs to be taken to a hospital for treatment, or perhaps they need to be removed from their home because they're a hoarder and they need to be at least temporarily placed in assisted living. If that person is not capable of giving consent because their cognitive abilities are compromised, the Adult Protective Service investigator is going to state that in the report, and there may be a recommendation to proceed with a protective services proceeding where a judge will order protective services for the person who's not capable of consenting. The investigator is going to also look into, is there a fiduciary relationship between the victim and the perpetrator? Is this somebody the victim knows? Doesn't have to be a professional fiduciary relationship like an accountant or a lawyer, but it can be a confidential relationship where that perpetrator is the one who's directing how the victim is cared for or not cared for. The investigator is going to interview the victim, interview the person that made the report, interview the victim's doctors, anybody else that has personal knowledge of what they believe is misrepresentation, fraud, deception, or exploitation. Now, these records are confidential. Healthcare authorities, doctors, hospitals, nurses, social workers, they have a mandatory reporting requirement. So if they suspect that somebody is the victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, by law, they must report it to the abuse hotline. And the person who does report the suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation is immune from any type of legal action. So what are some of the legal tools that are available to help should you know of somebody that's being abused or exploited? We've walked through that we need to get the authorities involved. We've walked through the step of getting medical attention. And now we're going to turn to the available legal options. If we have a situation where somebody is in imminent physical danger or imminent financial exploitation, we can use what is called the emergency temporary guardianship proceeding. This gets us into court immediately upon filing court papers showing the judge the facts that give rise to the emergency. We will get an immediate hearing, and if the judge believes that we have demonstrated that an emergency is present, an emergency guardian will be appointed for 90 days. And their job is to stabilize the situation. That might mean we need to get the person out of their home. We might need to get them medical attention and treatment. We might need to temporarily place them until it is safe for them to return home. We might have to marshal their assets, pay their bills. So that's one of the first legal tools that we consider. Now, if it's not an emergency situation, nobody's in imminent harm, there's no financial exploitation taking place, but this is somebody who's a vulnerable adult. You see signs that indicate they're not taking good care of themselves, they're not paying their bills, and they don't have a legal document such as a durable power of attorney giving someone they trust authority to make medical or financial decisions, then we're going to file for either a plenary guardianship, which means full, it's guardianship of person and property, or we might file for a limited guardianship, maybe just over person or just over property, or maybe our neighbor is still capable of making some decisions. Maybe they want to still have the right to vote, the right to travel, but maybe they're not in the best position to handle financial affairs. So we can limit the scope of the guardianship. Now, when we pursue a guardianship that is not an emergency, the normal time from when we file the papers to when we get the hearing is approximately 4 weeks. And then it can be several days after that to have the guardian appointed. If we do find ourselves in a situation of helping somebody who is being financially exploited or abused, then Florida has a great tool which is called an injunction. And the injunction is meant to protect vulnerable adults. So a petition is filed giving the judge information about the victim and including facts that identify the perpetrators and what the perpetrator is doing to attempt to remove assets or property belonging to the victim. Like the emergency guardianship, we get a hearing immediately in front of the judge. And if the judge feels that this adult is a vulnerable adult and that the facts point in the direction that there is exploitation being committed, the judge will sign an order of injunction, which allows us to then freeze all assets, bank accounts, investments, even the home, so that that perpetrator cannot access the assets. There will be a second hearing to determine whether the injunction should continue permanently. Now, if the perpetrator is committing physical or emotional abuse, we might want to seek from the court a restraining order so that that perpetrator is not permitted to go near the victim, whether they are restrained from going near their home, their job, could be school if it's a young child. So a restraining order is another tool that can be used. And these tools can be used as a team. It doesn't have to be that you choose one over the other. If the perpetrator is a person who is named in a durable power of attorney and they are misusing their power, then we can also ask a court to suspend the authority under the power of attorney. And last but not least, the client or their guardian can bring a civil action against the perpetrator who has breached their fiduciary duty under the durable power of attorney, or it might be a trust document that they are misusing. So I hope that you walk away from today's webinar feeling that you can identify the warning signs, you know the questions to ask if you suspect abuse, neglect, and exploitation, and that you know some of the resources, both locally and on the state level, that you can access to get immediate help as well as to get proper legal advice. And I'm here to help you with any of these kinds of matters. You can reach me at 954-382-1997. And I encourage everybody to visit my website at www.fl-elderlaw.com. We have a lot of great information, tips, as well as recorded webinars on the website. So I'd like to thank everybody who joined me today. Please stay safe, stay vigilant, keep your eyes open, and help your neighbors. Have a great day.